Well, hi there, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of the Gary Neville Podcast. We're at the Emirates Stadium, home of Arsenal, and we talk about Arsenal in a while, but we've seen Chelsea with Lukaku. Your thoughts, Gary?
It was a great performance from Chelsea, but it was a great performance from Lukaku. There were times when I watched Lukaku at Everton, watched him at Manchester United, where I felt as though his all-round game, he didn't contribute enough if he didn't score, and there were times there's accusations that he didn't play well in the big games. You know, absolutely flawless centre-forward performance today, really. If you think about what you want from your striker, hold the ball up, occupy centre-backs, bring people into play, be a threat in front of goal, run the channels, and all those things he did. And Chelsea aren't a pressing team, so it suits him. I think the reason I've said in the last couple of weeks about him not being suited to, say, Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, or even at Old Trafford is a different type of place to play football, different expectations. Chelsea have never been really a pressing club where they've played, that high-intensity front foot. They've always been a controlled team, an experienced team, a team that's mature. Even going back all those years to Jose Mourinho's team where they had John Terry and Cavallo and Gallas, those types of players, positionally very good as a team. And he's come into a team that are very good, very confident, Champions League winners, but they needed that focal point up front. The great Chelsea teams over the last 15 years have had great single strikers, and it's tough to play as a single striker. I've said that goalkeeper is the hardest position on the pitch. Playing up front on your own, I think, is the second hardest thing to do on a football pitch. He does it incredibly well. And what he's going to do to Pulisic, Werner, Havertz, Mount, Ziyech is just take all the weight off their shoulders, all the pressure away from them. I'm not thinking that Havertz hasn't done incredibly well today, or Werner's not scored, or Ziyech hasn't scored. I'm just thinking that all those players supplement a great striker really well. They're playing around him well. And it was a complete performance from Chelsea, but as a striker to do what he did today, look, Arsenal have got a problem at centre-back that now in 2 games, Chelsea almost played 5-3-2 today, similar to what Brentford did, because they've seen what Tony did, particularly in that game for Brentford, messed Ben White around. Mari, obviously, today has been sort of latched onto by Lukaku. I mean, he's toyed with him, really. I mean, it's not being disrespectful. If you look at that struggle that Mari had during that match, it was enormous. A little bit of ego to start with from Mari, thinking he could fight him, naivety. Then it went into desperation with the kicking through the back of him, and in the end he submitted and just accepted that he couldn't stop what Lukaku wanted to do. And the only surprise, really, we're just watching a little clip of Lukaku on the screen here, is that he didn't go and score 2 and 3, and he probably should have done if it hadn't been from a great save from Leno. So well done to Romelu Lukaku, but I felt like it was ominous inevitability. I used the word guarantee. I never use that about a signing. There's always a risk, but I just feel this one is just so perfect for Chelsea.
Do you think the depth of regret that they didn't stick with him a bit longer when he was a young man? He's been telling everybody all week he's a Chelsea fan, and he's got the evidence to prove that. I was at I don't remember whether we worked together on that Super Cup game where he missed the penalty in the shootout in that Super Cup in Prague, I think it was. Yeah. And that was his last kick until, as a Chelsea player in the first team game, until he kicked off here today. It seems like it's built to maybe the right time to come out. It's almost a fairy story, really.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that, I don't think Chelsea will regret not keeping him, because Chelsea want instant success. We know that. Managers get 18 months, 2 years, so they can't allow themselves the glory of sort of building with young players over a 4 or 5 year period. I think Frank maybe had that thought, didn't he, when he came in, that he could work with young players, bring Tammy Abraham through. They've let Tammy Abraham go. He could be another one that in 5 years, I think there was talk of a buyback clause in by Chelsea, knowing that he could go on to become a Lukaku of the future. And I think that's what Chelsea do. They accept their model. They sell well, they sign well, they buy back. They've done it before many times, and I don't think Chelsea will be regretful. I don't think Lukaku will, because he's gone away and learnt and become a better player and established himself and matured. And that's a different Romelu Lukaku than we saw at Chelsea first time round, and a different Romelu Lukaku than we saw at Manchester United. We know that he's leaner. He's found himself. He said at the top of his confidence, other issues that he had within himself. It looks like you've just got the fully developed, perfect signing that's in the almost perfect moment in his career, and Chelsea do that time and time again. So no, they won't regret letting him go. Letting him go has allowed him to mature. He's flown away from the nest, and he's now come back to rule the nest.
Nicely put. Missing ingredient, the last piece in the jigsaw, all these things that Tuchel's been saying.
Yeah.
It did look like that, I guess, today. But against, you've put it into context, against an Arsenal side that was patched up, an Arsenal side that's struggling really with its own context in any game at the moment.
It was. I mean, I think we've got to take that into context, but it looked simple for Chelsea. So controlled. And I said, Manchester City are a freak, so forget them for a second. But all the great teams, whether it be Liverpool in the last few years, they can counter-attack, they can press, they can play direct, they can withstand pressure, they can fight if you want to fight. This Chelsea team look like they've got everything. They can keep possession through midfield and got great composure. They can cross and score from crosses. They can defend set pieces. And Chelsea looked to me like out there today, a team right at the top of the game. And it's difficult to go from 4th place to champions. We know that. But I feel like they could. Look, I think if City got Kane and what they've seen, I mean, City won't react off what Chelsea are doing. But they do know they need that something up top. They do. Or else they wouldn't be showing interest in Harry Kane. But I just wonder whether Pep's looking at Lukaku there and thinking, I'm going to need that focal point. I'm going to need that man to get past this Chelsea team. And it might just make Manchester City blink this week watching Chelsea today. Because it did look a little ominous. It's very early and a lot can happen. It's a marathon in the league and I should know better. You know, you cannot say that someone's going to be league champions after 2 games, and you certainly can't with this exceptional Manchester City team around. But they've got everything you've got everything now that you would feel that it would take. Lukaku stays fit. The 3 midfield players are good. The wing backs are fantastic that they've got. The back line's good. The goalkeeping hours obviously made a massive difference in this last 12 months. So yeah. Interesting times. We've got a great Premier League. We really have. The 2 best teams in Europe last year in the final, and I think we're going to have them going head-to-head this year. And Manchester United and Liverpool have got to try and get in amongst that.
Let's talk about them. Let's talk about, you've watched Manchester United as much as we're allowed to before before our game starts here. We always try and keep up for these kind of conversations, really. What did you see, and what were your verdicts on what you saw?
Well, it was a rerun of last season, apart from the fact that they didn't come back and win. I mean, they went behind so many times away from home last season, Manchester United, but then came back to win. I always wondered when we were talking on commentary, I wonder whether it would be different. And Southampton did find that new lease of life, didn't they, in that last 15 minutes? And
with the crowd
backing them and singing. And you just think, well, that maybe wouldn't have happened last year. Southampton could have got drained by the fact that, you know, you're looking around those vacuous stadiums and you're thinking, what's going to get me going? Because players thrive on adrenaline, on the buzz of the crowd. And it's only a small sample, but it's today a small sample that means that Manchester United will be really disappointed not coming away from Southampton with a victory. They created good chances in the early parts of the match. We were watching it, obviously, in the build-up to this. But I was shocked in the last 15 minutes that Southampton grew back into the game and looked dangerous. I thought that Manchester United, after the goal, a fantastically worked goal with Paul Pogba involved, didn't just go on and sort of take away that second, that third, and the 3 points. It was a shock to me.
A word on James Ward-Prowse. Southampton are a selling club, and he's now pledged his future with a long-term new deal, which was very obviously recognised by the supporters in the stadium. How much is that a statement that can mean a lot to a football club that's had a pretty difficult time, to be honest, recently? Yeah,
I mean, it's been obliterated over the years, hasn't it, by many of the top clubs.
You saw Luke Shaw playing against him,
Yeah, it's been obliterated. Just the fact that they've got a really good academy system. They bring players through that are technically gifted, that are good types, that are loyal to Southampton. They actually are loyal to Southampton. Even the lads that leave, when they talk about their days at Southampton, they're always fond days and good days, and they sort of don't turn on the club in any way, shape or form. We obviously famously know that Matt Letizia hung in there throughout his whole career, but great players have left. And what James Ward-Prowse, he suits Southampton. He's obviously loyal to the area. I think it was rewarded, and I think players have that decision to make, don't they, at points in their career? You know, Harry Kane's got one at the moment with regards to Tottenham. Does he stay at one club and demonstrate that loyalty to that club, even though it might not get him what he wants to in terms of, obviously, honours? Or does he try and leave? And I think James Ward-Prowse has made that decision, each to their own. Harry Kane's not wrong, and James Ward-Prowse isn't right or wrong either. They've all got that decision to make in their own lives. But I'm glad he stayed, because I think that, you know, Southampton have got a massive fight on this year, but you saw the manager's reaction at the end of the game. That was a big point today, just to get something from the game against Manchester United, because there was 15 minutes into that second half. he'll have been thinking, here we go, this is not going to go well.
Liverpool played 2-1-2, and they managed their task well against Burnley. Burnley, to the delight of the commentators, numbered 1 to 11.
They did. They nearly did it last year once, didn't they? I think
they
were one short. I was there.
We did the game. Yeah.
I mean, Liverpool, I'm really looking forward to next Saturday. It's Liverpool v Chelsea next Saturday at Anfield. Are you doing the game, Martin? You're not doing the game. Oh, I'm doing the game next Saturday, Liverpool v Chelsea. So I'm really looking forward to that game next Saturday. A full Anfield, this Chelsea team going there. That's a real test for both teams. Are Liverpool back? Van Dijk versus Lukaku. So it's a game that I think tells us a lot more about both of these clubs. Look, Chelsea have given us a good inkling of what they're about today, but it's an Arsenal team that are well below where they would be even in this season with the players they've got missing. But next Saturday it will be ferocious at Anfield, 5:30 kickoff, and we'll see a real measure of both teams and where they're at. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Liverpool have had a good start to the season. It's important obviously to get Van Dijk back, critical to them, but also important for them to get 2 good wins under the belt against Norwich and Burnley, teams that they ordinarily would, you expect them to get 6 points from. So yeah, there'll be look, it's early, but I think that these points in the season are good markers in terms of where teams are going to be and what they're about and where they're at. And I think that next Saturday will tell us some of that.
Jurgen Klopp, one of the few people who hasn't really appreciated the change in refereeing.
I'm surprised.
Well, he obviously has his reasons, but it was an outburst that possibly didn't need to make. But
before the game as well, he was talking about sort of the referees and the Leno one against Brentford.
Yeah, we've gone back 15 years, I think was one of the quotes. We think we've gone back in the right way.
Yeah, I mean, everybody last weekend, everybody on and off the pitch in the interviews seemed to think that we were going in the right direction. I still think that. I think we've seen great refereeing performances this weekend. We've seen lighter touches with VAR. We've seen the referees not as interfere with the game as much.
There was a penalty shout here that probably last season when Saka went down that might have been given last season.
Definitely, and we've been all getting used to VAR. I think even now the most, I suppose, the people who've hated VAR the most are probably thinking, I can probably handle it if it stays like this. So I think the referees, for me, have been brilliant in this first 2 weeks. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, that's not to say they won't make a mistake, but I think they've been absolutely fantastic. And so have Stockley Park. So I'm really surprised that Jurgen Klopp has sort of gone for them in this period and saying that we're going back 15 years because, this is the man who talked about heavy metal football being fast and furious and the excitement of English football and the cut and thrust of it and people sliding tackles, all the things that you'd expect Jurgen Klopp would love, and the physicality of the game. Yeah, and something's just sort of not sitting well with him. I'm not quite sure what it is. Maybe we'll get that out of him in the next couple of weeks. But he does feel as though the physical part of the game that has come back in this last couple of weeks isn't quite sitting well with him, which I've been surprised with. And maybe I can push Jamie Carragher on Monday Night Football tomorrow as to the sort of inside story as to why he feels that way.
A word on Brighton, because they played 2-1-2 and our Sky Sports Live game yesterday. Yeah, they took their chance for a wider audience and delivered, didn't they? And Graham Potter's team play with a great deal of thought and they're worth studying. I always feel they're really worth looking at.
Yeah, it's interesting there because you look at Graham Potter and I think that he was courted by Tottenham in the summer and Brighton said, no, he's staying here. They've obviously got a really good coach. And when you watch Brighton last season, there were games where you watched them and they thought, they create so many chances. And if you thought they just, let's say they had a striker or two from one of the top clubs in there, they'd win an awful lot of football games. They just haven't got that 30, 40, 50 million pound striker that is the difference at times between winning games and not winning games. And you look at Brighton, a lot of very good things happen at that club. The structure behind the scenes, the way in which they sort of built the stadium in the last few years, they built the club, the recruitment, Dan Ashworth's work with Paul Barber that's sort of there. So they've got good people in there as well. They've got Graham Potter, who I think he says is a fantastic coach. And you watch Brighton, you can't dislike them. And I've not got Brighton as a team that I think will go down this season. I think they can see 3 or 4 teams already that I would think will be struggling a lot more than them. So it's been a good start to the season. And they're doing good work down there and you get rewards for good work.
I teased you in the commentary about what defenders are allowed to do and get away with. But I have to say it was a good day for the big striker today, wasn't it?
It was. And, Martin, I've played against big strikers as a centre-back. I've played against wingers that, are stronger than me, quicker than you. And you just think, how do you cope with that? I've been there when I've played against players, and it's just been too much for me. And you've got to bring your teammates around you. You've got to put someone right on his toes in front. They got the ball far too often into Lukaku's feet. And Mari, he was suffering. He was suffering. And I've said this before about Arsenal, not necessarily in the last 12 months under Arteta, but certainly over the last 5, 6, 7 or 8 years. I've watched young fullbacks go out on this pitch for Arsenal and be exposed, and I've seen wingers not go back and help them and double up, and them just continually be exposed. And you've got to do something different. You've got to find a different way. And today, Xhaka and Lukanga had the right spirit, but they didn't block the ball going in. And is Kovacic ever going to score? Is Kovacic ever going to open you up? So stand on Jorginho. Smith Rowe stands on Jorginho, and the other two just shield really close in front. Be a bit deeper. I know it's a little bit negative. Or you have to go the other way, which is go right on top of Jorginho and Kovacic and let the back line push up a little bit. They didn't do any really. They fell in between, pushing up really high, and then dropping off and protecting so that they were that deep that they couldn't get the ball into Lukaku. They just fed it into him, and they just played off him all day long. He's doing an interview now, and he looks like he's gone 12 rounds there of a game and basically not broke sweat. You think about the great players who just come off and look like it was simple for him. It was easy for him. And he's now a great striker, Romelu Lukaku. Maybe he always was. Maybe he just didn't have the right team, and maybe Inter Milan was the right club for him, but I certainly think Chelsea's the right club for him.
And maybe you've just answered your earlier question about why Jurgen Klopp decided to make that point, because Romelu Lukaku is landing in his lap next weekend and will apply himself physically as well as the other attributes that he's got.
I mean, I hope next weekend, I saw the Romelu Lukaku for Everton a couple of times at Anfield and was really disappointed. I hope he goes there next weekend. Yeah, the easy thing would be to play on the opposite side to Van Dijk, but I hope he goes and plays against Van Dijk for parts of the game and really goes against him and tries to unnerve him and see, are you back? Are you the man? I think that'd be a brilliant battle to watch. Really can't wait for it.
A Belgian against a Dutchman. You bet it will happen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks, Martin.